My name's Jamie Quartermain, and I've been a glider pilot at Sutton Bank since 1987. I'm now an instructor and I'm very active within the operation of the gliding club. However, I have an alternative existence, which is as an archaeologist. And I spent much of my time in northern England, places like Wales, but further afield like Saudi Arabia, Nepal, China, studying how landscapes in the past have formed and how they've developed. Aerial archaeology, the opportunity to look at the archaeology from the air, is something I've been doing for many years. The ability to be able to recognise and identify archaeological features from the air is actually fundamental to the job that I do. So what we're doing here is a complete and perfect synchronicity of my pleasure as a glider pilot and my work life as an archaeologist. High on the North York Moors is Sutton Bank, facing out into the Vale of York behind me. For thousands of years, remarkably, there's been very little agricultural change. As a result, there have been finds of flint and Bronze Age pottery, the physical remains of past cultures. These are a reflection of occupation, of activity, of settlement that goes back up to 3,000 years ago. Extending across the western escarpment of the North York Moors are a series of ancient boundary dykes. These boundary dykes for a long time have been considered to be medieval, but we now believe them to be much older and to reflect land ownership and agricultural systems that extend all the way back into the prehistoric period. At one of these, Cleve Dyke, excavations have revealed a series of post pits underneath the bank, which indicate that these are much earlier than the medieval period. And because they align with Bronze Age cairns, give an indication that they may go back at least another 4,000 years from now. Behind me is what visibly looks like an extremely large bank. What we believe this to be now is a Neolithic long cairn. The characteristic of the monument is the fact that it's got a trapezoidal shape which converges towards this end and is more bulbous at the far end. And it's a potentially really significant feature. Not only is it an extremely old Neolithic, 3,000-year-old long cairn, but it's got extending out to the back of it is a long linear dike, Hesketh Dyke, which extends between this cairn all the way through to the head of a gully which extends way into the national park. The significance of this is the fact that we've got potentially a feature at this key location, which is the Neolithic long cairn, which is part of a dike system and which has continued in use all the way through to the present. It may imply that this fantastic prehistoric boundary system dates all the way back to the Neolithic. At Caston Dyke, we have the remarkable situation of a Bronze Age burial cairn where the earthwork of the dike goes all the way around the cairn. Here on my left is a very large Bronze Age burial cairn, and converging on this cairn in that direction and behind me is Caston Dyke. Caston Dyke now is a large earthwork monument. But right here, Caston Dyke circumnavigates around the cairn. But originally, it would have been a series of post holes, a series of a fence network running all the way along, converging on the burial cairn. But then, in the medieval period, it was reformed into a large earthwork, and then at that stage, they constructed a large earthwork with bank and ditch, and they constructed the bank all the way around the cairn, and that's what we see today. Across the area of Sutton Bank are up to 20 Bronze Age burial cairns. These were the burial places of significant and powerful individuals within their community. Their location and their status is reflected in the fact they're near the edge of the scarp slope with a fantastic view outwards across the Vale of York. This could reflect power and influence. But undoubtedly the largest monument of them all is the Iron Age Hillfort at Roulston Scar. 24 hectares in extent, 2.1 kilometres all the way around its perimeter, and indeed the largest in Yorkshire. The Hillfort exploited the enormous natural defences of Roulston Scar, but in addition they had banks and earthwork ditches all the way around the perimeter of the Hillfort. However, the weakest point was to the north, and that point was defended by an extremely large bank and ditch with timber ramparts. Unfortunately, these were lost in the late 20th century when the landscape was reshaped to form the present gliding club. Today, Sutton Bank is a place to walk, to fly, to enjoy the fantastic scenery looking out of the Vale of York from Roulston Scar. But in the past, this was a landscape that was worked, it was farmed, it was defended, and was a place of much settlement and activity. And all that history is still present within the land.